Okay, now the first thing we're going to start with is the major scale, the concept of the major scale, which is the most popular scale in Western music. You might already be familiar with it. If you've been listening to the radio in any part of the Western Hemisphere over the past couple, at least the past century or so, or if you've heard any music, okay, you're probably familiar with what the major scale is. Really common sound. It's the most fundamental scale that's used in all the music you hear today, all the popular music that you hear today. Now what we're going to do is we're going to build it up and down a single string, just so you can have some idea of how the notes work together in terms of their distances apart from one another. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to find one location on the neck where we can play all these notes just to keep them together in more of a cohesive form. Just that makes it easier to play in terms of moving up and down the neck as opposed to staying in one position, which is what we're going to try to do. So we're going to start with the C major scale. Now, if you played any piano in the past, you might know that the key of C is all the white keys on the piano, no sharps or flats. That's the reason a lot of music theory classes, music theory books, instructional materials in general start off with the key of C, because you're not dealing with any sharps or flats. It's more significant on the piano than it is on the guitar, honestly. But nonetheless, we're going to start with the key of C. We're going to build the C major scale up and down a single string, and then we're going to learn how to play it in one area of the guitar, and then we'll probably stick to that for the remainder of this first part of the lesson. So we're going to build the C major scale on the second string. So here's our first note. You can use any finger for this. This isn't really a technical thing. We're just going to get these notes together. So here's our first note, C. Second string, first fret. Now what we're going to do is we're going to follow a pattern of whole steps and half steps to build this scale. Most scales that we use in music are built with these basic type of intervals. Intervals is another word for distance, okay? So whole step and half step are the two most common intervals. Whole step is a distance of 2 frets, which means a half step's the distance of 1 fret. Whole step, 2 frets, half step, 1 fret. Now these aren't the only types of intervals that are used in scale construction, but they are the most common ones, and they're definitely the ones that we use to construct a major scale. So once again, we're starting with C, which is the second string, first fret. Now our next note goes up a whole step, it's 2 frets, to the 3rd fret, D. All of these notes are going to be on the second string. Next, up a whole step to the 5th fret, E. Next, up a half step, that's 1 fret, to the 6th fret, F. Next, a whole step to the 8th fret, G. Next, a whole step to the 10th fret, A. Again, after the letter G, the musical alphabet starts over again. The letters in the musical alphabet start over again, so we're back to A here at the 10th fret. Next, we go up a whole step to the 12th fret, double dot, B. And then finally, our last note, up a whole step, a half step, C. So here we are one more time from low to high. Second string, first fret, C. Up a whole step to D. Up a whole step to E. Up a half step to F. Up a whole step to G. Up a whole step to A. Up a whole step to B. And then up a half step to C. So that's the C major scale up and down the second string. Again, that's a very, very common sound in Western music. You've heard it in everything from TV show commercials, themes, to popular music, to punk rock, to holiday songs, all kinds of, just about every kind of music you can imagine incorporates this major scale tonality. Let's play it backwards one time. Starting on the second string, 13th fret, C. So now we're going backwards in the music alphabet. Back a half step to B. Down a whole step to A. Down a whole step to G. Down a whole step to F. Down a half step to E. Down a whole step to D. and then down a whole step to C, back where we began. So we covered 8 notes in the music alphabet, and the prefix oct means 8, so that's where the term octave comes from. So that's 1 octave of the C major scale. Now, it's very possible to improvise up and down the single string using those notes. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of that right now. What I'm going to do is nothing in particular. I'm just going to put on a simple little loop here, and I'm just going to play those notes up and down the second string and just try to create some very basic melodies. That's the whole idea about improvisation, is creating melodies. You start off simple, and then, there's definitely the potential to get really complex as time goes by, and, the more acclimated to this kind of thing you get. But for now, this is just going to be an example of going up and down the second string, trying to create very simple melodies, just using those notes in the C major scale, which we just learned. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what I did there definitely wasn't rocket science by any means, okay? I just took that basic scale, that C major scale that we constructed, and I just very simply moved up and down the second string and just tried to create some really basic melodies with it. And you may have noticed that I changed direction every now and then. Sometimes if I found a note that I thought sounded good to me and that made a real solid connection with the chord that I was playing over, which was a C chord, by the way, a C major chord, which is this. If I found a note that I thought made a real solid connection with the chord, I stopped on it, hung out on that note for a little bit, and then maybe played around and came back to it from time to time. And again, those are just, some of the very basic ideas that you want to try to implement when you're improvising. And again, what you want to try to imagine, this may be an abstract concept for you right now, but this is really something that you want to start thinking seriously about, is what you're trying to do is you're trying to sing through your instrument. Now that sounds kind of funny. Maybe you sing, maybe you don't, okay? Everybody has the potential to sing. Some people do it better than others. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to create lyrical, melodic, vocal ideas and just have them come through your instrument. And not all of us have great voices, but the idea is to allow the guitar to be your voice, to actually sing through the instrument. Now I know that sounds kind of like an esoteric idea, but it really is true. And the more you practice this, the more you'll be able to do this. You conceive these melodies and musical ideas in your head. The more you practice this group of notes, the more you'll eventually start to hear melodies that you can construct using those notes. Some very simple melodies. Here's a couple examples. Again, those were 2 really basic melodic ideas from that scale, but those are the type of things that you can sing, and you have been singing. When you listen to music, when you're walking down the street or in the car or wherever you hear music. So what you're trying to do is actually conceive these ideas once you're used to playing with the scale a little bit, once you have the sound of the scale in your ear, and then you actually try to sing these ideas through your instrument. That's the way it works. The guitar is just the tool that you use to get these melodies out. And that's really important to realize. The guitar really doesn't have all that much to do with it. It's all what's going on in your mind, and more importantly, inside your inner musical ear. And you'll see more of that as these lessons move on.